All right, good evening, East Hampton Town Board. We're live on Channel 22. We're streaming to YouTube, and this meeting is being recorded, and the phone lines are open. You may begin.
Thank you, Matthew. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the East Hampton Town Board meeting of Thursday, March 19th, 2026. Michael, if you could please read the roll call.
Councilmember Flight.
Present.
Councilmember Lease.
Present.
Councilmember Rogers.
Present.
Councilmember Calder-Piedmont.
Present.
Supervisor Kathy Burke-Gonzalez.
Present. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So tonight we have 5 public hearings that we're looking for input from the community on. The first is the John Osborne Homestead Draft Management Plan. Second is an acquisition of 10 and 14 Lakeside Court in Montauk. The third public hearing is the 2026 CPF Management and Stewardship Plan. The fourth public hearing is a grant of scenic and conservation easement for 164 Westlake Drive in Montauk. And the last public hearing is for a grant of a scenic and conservation easement at 124 Beach Lane in Wainscott. That'll be followed by public portion and resolutions, and we kindly ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. But before we begin, we have Mr. Hugh King here tonight. Welcome, Hugh.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. The town crier is still on February break, but he'll be back in April, and I hope to bring Colin Kelly here. Colin Kelly is the young man who's the podcast that he's developed. So he's going to come and talk about that next meeting. Okay, valedictory, orations, songs and speeches, harangues and dialogues. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Clinton Academy, 1821 to 1921. Why am I telling you about that? Because if you come on Friday, March 27th, 2006, 7 o'clock at the East Hampton Library, the following people: Joe D'Elia, Joe Brando, Francine Whitney, Franco Pistrito, Joni McDonald, and David Cataletto will be showing you what happened at Clinton Academy and Clinton Hall in the years 1821 to 1921. Didn't I tell you last time about some of the women who appeared on stage here and how groundbreaking that was? Well, we're going to show you some of the orations, dialogues, and songs that took place. And one of the people whose poems are going to be read is Cornelia Huntington. Now, Cornelia Huntington is important for several reasons. First of all, she kept a diary from 1821, starting in 1821, and it ended in the 1880s. Unfortunately, it's not consecutive, but the diary has been transcribed. It's in the Long Island collection of the library. And when you read it, you have a window in what it was like to live in East Hampton, especially as a woman during this time period. And her diary showed us something else. This place was packed with people in 1850, not when the artists came, not when the railroad came. People were here because she wrote a novel called Sea Spray, which was a thinly veiled story of East Hampton. All the characters in there you can relate to a real person in East Hampton. And that story that she told had people coming here in the 1850s, probably for the water, for the sea. That's why people came here. All right. Now, unfortunately, she had to publish the book under a pseudonym, Martha Wickham. All right. Also, her poems were said not to be published until after she died, okay? Her odes were sung at the 1849 and 1899 celebration of East Hampton's history, okay? So she wrote a poem about the wreck of the John Milton, and that's going to be read, okay? That's all I have.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us this evening.
Good luck.
Michael, if you could please read the first meeting notice.
The public hearing will be held live and in person by the town board and will be available electronically by video and teleconferencing, and will be televised on local TV, Channel 22, and available for live stream on the LTV website, ltveh.org. The public shall be permitted to appear in person, but may also provide comment on the matter being heard by calling 888-6331. Any person or party wishing to be heard with respect to the foregoing may do so in person or by agent or attorney, by teleconference to the live meeting, or by written comment addressed to the East Hampton Town Clerk, 159 Pentago Road, East Hampton, New York, 11937. Comments may also be submitted to the Town Clerk by email, mhanson@ehamptonny.gov. All comments must be received by the Town Clerk by the date and time of the public hearing. Please check the meeting agenda posted on the town's website for any changes and for updated information. Notice is hereby given that the Town Board of the Town of East Hampton will hold a public hearing on Thursday, March 19, 2026 at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter, as this matter may be heard to consider comments of all persons on the proposed draft management plan for the John Osborne Homestead, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-200-2-29. The full text of the management plan is available for inspection at the office of the Town Clerk, 159 Pentago Road, East Hampton, New York, during regular business hours, 9 a.m. through 3:30 p.m., Monday through Friday, exclusive of holidays.
Great, thank you, Michael. Scott, did you want to do an introduction of the?
Yeah, I'll do a short introduction. Glasses on here, so share this.
Thank you.
Oh, that share did not work at all. I just want to put the document up. So the town board acquired a remarkable parcel at 66 Wainscott, Maine in December of 2024. Town board also dedicated the buildings as a John Osborne Homestead Historic Landmark in March of 2025. The original draft management plan crafted with the Property Management Committee was presented at a work session last November, at which the town board had several comments and modifications. We also had received a written comment from the Wainscott Heritage Project and from Sarah Davison. Thank you. Those comments were reviewed and some of the language had been incorporated into a revised draft. The Property Management Committee reviewed all changes at its January 21st meeting and had no further proposed modifications. That draft, dated 1/29/2026, was discussed at a second work session on February 3rd, 2026. A copy of the draft has been available to the town board at the town clerk's office and on the town's website. This is a guidance document for town staff that also sets an expectation of how the property may be utilized by the public. It is designed with some flexibility for this and future town boards. Now, I haven't received any additional other public comments to me directly outside of some that I just received from Hillary Osborne Malecki, who kindly pointed out a mistake that we have on page 6 of this document. And so that is one correction that I'm going to be asking for the board. And this document that I actually have up on your screen, you'll note if I scroll down, I still have the sections that we modified from its first iteration highlighted in yellow, and I would be more than happy to go through each of those modifications. We did that at the last work session. So
Yeah, I don't think we need to do that
at your
tonight.
discretion. Okay. So let me at least tell you what Hillary pointed out, because it is a change that we're going to have to make to this document. It is minor, but it is also worthwhile. It's on page 6 right here. With regard to the garage residence, I referred to the garage doors as roll-up garage doors. They actually slide on wooden doors that slide on a track. And also, it sounds as if when I wrote this that, there were 4 ensuite bedrooms upstairs. That's not true. There's 1 bathroom upstairs and a half bath downstairs. So I'm just going to make that modification. And I know we have a number of folks from the public who might want to speak on this, and so there might be more changes that we might consider. Otherwise, if the board has questions with regard to the draft that we have right now, I know I incorporated all of the changes the town board requested the first time around. So if you don't want to go through them one by one, then.
I think we'll hear from the public now.
Okay.
I think everybody's good with that? Yes. Great. So we have a few folks signed up, and then I'll ask for a show of hands. So the first speaker is Sarah Davison. Welcome, Sarah.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Davison. I'm speaking as a private resident of Springy Banks Road. And as you heard, you've already received comments from me on this property, so I'm going to keep this very, very short. But I'd like to start by thanking the board once again for purchasing this incredibly significant property. It is an enormous asset to our town, and we're here tonight because the future management of this property is so important. And the only thing I really want to stress that is part of the comments that I submitted to you is about the views. And I said to you, an iconic view of Wainscott Pond exists, reminiscent of a 19th and early 20th century landscape. And for those of us lucky enough to have been to Gardiner's Island, if you kind of squint and look out at Wainscott Pond and the dune and the fields, you almost feel like you're on Gardiner's Island. And that is such a treasure and such a special view that I just want to urge you that this community asset must be paramount in all planning for this property. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Next up is Hersey Eggington. Welcome, Hersey.
Welcome, Kathy, and members of the town board, and Mr. Wilson. I'm Hersey Eggington. I'm the chair of the Wainscott Citizens Advisory Committee, and I submitted a letter to you on behalf of the WCAC on March the 9th, and I'd like to read it into the record with your permission. It goes longer than 3 minutes, and I've asked my long-suffering wife to complete the document for me. To the town board, the Wainscott Citizens Advisory Committee has reviewed the draft Osborne Homestead Management Plan and supports many of its guidelines, but also has some concerns and recommends several important adjustments. On the occasion of this public hearing, the WCAC would like to offer the following comments to the record. Under the mission statement, it is commendable that the mission statement has been expanded to include recognition of, quote, the exceptional historic and ongoing scenic value of this site, end quote, and the paramount importance of protecting the viewshed in perpetuity. Also noteworthy is appending of Hillary Osborne Malecki's historical narrative and Zach Studenroth's architectural assessment. Relative to this narrative, we note that the characterization of the Osborne homestead as representative of the 19th century rural and farming character of Wainscott, in quotes, is misleading, if not incorrect, and should be modified to recognize that the Osborne family roots extend back to 1675. Under the category of farming, it is noted that the town may license land for agricultural purposes without outlining any limitation on the amount of acreage that could be consumed by active farming of any kind, without restrictions on deer fencing or other agricultural structures, and without any requirements for the use of organic or other low-impact methods. The WCAC respectfully suggests this be revised to eliminate the potential of the land for active farming. Such a use would almost certainly have a detrimental impact on the water quality of Wainscott Pond, as well as the open character of the viewshed. In addition, it should be noted that the Osborne homestead hasn't been used for active farming other than small plots, conceivably for flowers and vegetables for family use for generations. Under pond and public access, it is noted the parcel now provides public access to Wainscott Pond, a highly impaired water body identified in the town's local waterfront revitalization plans as a significant coastal fish and wildlife habitat. The draft management plan allows for the creation of a multi-use path, possibly 0.5 to a 0.85 mile loop. Though such asphalt loops have been created on a couple of other CPF properties, we believe it would not be appropriate for this parcel for several important reasons. An impervious track loop this large would interfere with the open viewshed and the ongoing scenic value of the site. It would also disturb the native wildlife and habitat that has flourished since active farming was abandoned, and introduction of such a path would encourage active recreation that could bring members of the public into contact with a highly impaired water body. Therefore, we recommend a mown in and out trail as preferable public access alternative, one that would better support passive enjoyment by the public.
you, Hersey. Welcome, Quincy. I guess you're tag teaming.
I'm Quincy Egginton, a resident of Wayne-Scott, and I will continue to read my husband Hersey's letter to you on behalf of the Wayne-Scott Citizen Advisory Committee. Historic structures. The Louisa Edwards Osborne House and Barn, which became a residence, retain their historic features. At the same time, they are in need of restoration. The WCAC recommends the management plan be modified to require restoration be carried out in coordination with a qualified architectural preservation consultant and in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. It should also state the goal of having the garage and residence of repurposed timber farm barn that may date from the 18th century be evaluated, photographed, measured, and drawn as a candidate for the Historic American Building Survey. Preservation and historic designation. The draft management plan encompasses not just the structures, but also the 28 acres of land upon which the structures stand. The WCAC strongly recommends the surrounding land and the entirety of the parcel to be given local historic designation by this board in order to ensure the historic structures retain their proper, original, intended setting, and that the historic viewshed be protected in perpetuity. The existence of this management plan alone does not protect the structures against the loss of content. It should be noted that recently acquired historic properties, the Parson Dodge Homestead, Duck Creek Farm, the Carl Fisher House, all have been structures, both the structures of the surrounding land designated as historic. The WCAC hopes that you will give these recommendations due consideration. Professionally, I am an artist and frequently paint in watercolor on location. The existing view of 66 Wayne-Scott Main Street looking south towards the ocean is one of the most beautiful scenes in all of the East End. It is critical to the large and growing artist community that the town do all it can to preserve it as it is. Thank you, Quincy Egginton.
Thank you, Quincy. Esperanza Leon. Welcome, Esperanza.
Good evening, members of the town board. My name is Esperanza Leon. I'm a resident of Wayne-Scott and president of Wayne-Scott Heritage Project, and I'm here on behalf of the organization to contribute comments regarding the John Osborne Homestead Management Plan, specifically in reference to the purposes of historic places and agricultural lands for which this purchase was made. This acquisition represents a vital opportunity to protect a tangible link to our town's foundational history, and that protection must be comprehensive to be effective. First, I address the historic purpose. The John Osborne Homestead is not merely a collection of old buildings. It is a rare, intact survivor of our community's early settlement period. The town's decision to acquire this property was rooted in the preservation of our shared heritage. If we allow the integrity of this site to be compromised, we fail the very purpose for which public funds were allocated. The Osborne House, the 1904 Louisa Edwards Osborne House, and the barn do not exist in isolation. Their historical significance is intrinsically tied to the spatial and visual relation of the surrounding open fields. Under town code, the setting is vital to maintaining the integrity of the landmark. We urge the board to landmark the entire site, including all the historic structures, along with the underlying land, to achieve ecological and historical synergy. A historic home does not exist in a vacuum. Its significance is inextricably tied to its setting. The homestead identity includes the spatial relationship between the house, the outbuildings, and the surrounding acreage. To landmark only the structures while leaving the ground beneath them unprotected is to preserve a shell while losing the story. As a former farm dating back to 1648 or thereabouts, the open acreage represents the agrarian history of the Osborne family. Designating the full 30 acres safeguards the vital wetlands, fields, and open vistas that define Wainscott's sense of place. The entire parcel functions as a contributing historic and cultural resource, one that is eligible for the state and national register, and should be designated as a whole. Furthermore, this aligns with CPF goals, since the town purchased this parcel specifically for the purposes of open space, agricultural lands, historic places, and water quality protection. To exclude the land creates a protection gap that is most certainly not covered by the existing agricultural overlay district designation. Full parcel designation codifies the town's commitment to preserve the property, this vista, in a manner the public has requested, the way it is as we see it now. And those are the words of my colleague, Bruce Solomon. Now, to address the agricultural use on the property, while agriculture is a part of our town's character, no doubt, farming on this site will be at odds with the remediation and protection of Wainscott Pond, and with the preservation of a sensitive historic site. We're almost done. Heavy machinery, large-scale irrigation, or intensive tilling in proximity to these historic foundations could pose a physical risk to the structures, and tall agricultural fencing or other modern structures needed for active contemporary farming would represent a visual risk to the site's historic character. We need clear, enforceable restrictions that prioritize the homestead as a heritage site first, ensuring that any agricultural activity is low impact, sustainable, and respectful of the property's primary historic mission. Preservation is not about freezing time, it is about managing change and ensuring that the most important pieces of our past aren't compromised or erased by the present. Please landmark the John Osborne Homestead in its entirety and ensure its management reflects its true value to this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Esperanza. Jane Meering. Welcome, Jane.
Good evening, Town Board. I'm Jane Meering. I'm speaking tonight as the Vice President of the Wainscott Heritage Project, so Esperanza and I are tag teaming it as well. And I am also speaking as an individual resident of Amagansett, and as, of course, as a lover of history, preservation, and beauty. So I'm going to pick up a little bit where Esperanza left off, and we didn't mention it yet, but we did submit a letter into the record, so I'm only going to paraphrase a few points. So I'm going to continue on this issue of the risk of having active agricultural use on this property, especially ag-related chemicals and irrigation, could really undermine the essential and urgent water quality remediation needs of the Wainscott Pond. I don't know if all of you saw it, but on March 9th, the trustees had a meeting. Dr. Gobler was there. He was presenting about water quality issues overall in the town, but he did actually spend a fair amount of time focused on Wainscott Pond. And I won't go through it all, but the news is grim, and I think the point he made is that it's really been deteriorating even more quickly over the last few years. In fact, he used one of my favorite Spinal Tap references. He basically said this pond is at 11 now all year round. And I won't go through. He talked about new neurotoxins, the blue-green algae, the high levels of organic nature, and of course, Dr. Gobler did say that the fact that the town has acquired this property is very happy news because it creates access and really an ability to get in there and do remediation. And when the topic of could this be farmed or not came up, Trustee Grimes warned, quote, "This is not a site you would ever want to till. You just aggregate all the water quality issues you're having now." So therefore, we continue to recommend that any decision making about potential for active agricultural use on this parcel needs to be most circumspect, and the management plan really does need to be more prescriptive about what kind of things could happen, what couldn't, but always keeping in mind that this could be an incredible undermining threat to really, I think what everyone wants to see is that pond restored and even accessible, to the public one day, which gets to the last point, I'm just going to touch on public access issues. I think Wayne-Scott CSC already raised it. We do want public access and enjoyment of this site, but we do think any asphalt or loop, while it works on several other CPF properties, we don't think it comports properly with the aesthetic of the property. We think there are other alternatives. The idea of sort of a mown path that maybe comes in from the side and meanders. Again, we want to have access, and I know there are other opportunities for making things accessible for all people. So I'm going to leave it at that, and thank you, obviously, again, for this stunning acquisition. The thing on the management plan, the designation of the landmark, I think what we are also trying to stress is we would like to see this board move on that now before, I don't mean right now, but before the management plan gets finalized. So if you are to do that, it would be reflected fully in the management plan. Thank you, board.
Thank you, Jane. Abigail Fleming. Welcome, Abby.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm Abby Fleming. My husband and I, Bill, built a house on Osborne Farmland in Wayne-Scott, probably 24 some years ago. Our daughter went to the Wayne-Scott School. I'm a teacher at the Wayne-Scott School. So that piece of property on the Wayne-Scott Pine, I drive by many times each day. And in 1980, when I first moved out here, I had this little tiny red Toyota, and I was driving down Main Street, Wayne-Scott, and there was a sign on the side of the road that said self-picked strawberries, right? I'm like, whoa, pulled over, got out of my car, and I can remember getting out of my car and looking at the field and seeing the pond and thinking, wow, all strawberries. So that piece of property is very special to me. We are fortunate living in Wayne-Scott that we do have a lot of open space thanks to the town. But as is happening is that when you see a big open field and it's being farmed, deer fence goes up, which is logical. It has to be that way. If there's another piece that's open, chances are it's going to be built on like what's happening in Wayne-Scott Hollow. So that very piece that we're talking about tonight is so special because to me, it's not, like I say, I've only been in Wayne-Scott for 24 years, but to me, it's a historical spot in Wayne-Scott that now has been preserved and can be saved for not only my generation, but the generations to come. So I'm grateful for that. And the other point I want to make is the path, and I also want to stress no asphalt. I can see just a mowed path going to the pond and back. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Abby. So we've gone through the list. So if there's anyone here that would like to speak to the John Osborne Homestead Draft Management Plan, if I see a show, Bruce, you want to go first? And then Kim, did you have your hand up? You can go after Bruce. Great. Welcome, Bruce.
It's going to take me a few minutes to get together, but I'll do my best.
I think. Where do they usually?
I don't think it's going to get on the screen if that's, so I mean, I don't think,
You pop it in front of us, she'd see it on the screen.
but it would have to be lower.
Make it zoom.
Thanks very much.
I mean, we can see it. We've also gotten this as a PDF already. It was in our emails, and we've gotten pictures sent from the gentleman,
The camera's not
John
on.
Stoner, but the camera won't be on that. Doesn't,
Let's see.
fortunately, it doesn't work that way.
So
If you could just say your name for the record, please.
my name is Bruce Wayne Solomon. I'm a resident of Wayne-Scott. So it looks tonight as though I'm going to be wearing a couple of different hats because I've had some folks ask me if I would read letters for them in addition to my own. So I don't I'll read mine now, and then I'll come back in between, and if that'll work for you, instead of just standing here and reading
Why
all
don't
three
you,
letters.
how many letters do you have?
3.
Okay, why don't you just do it all at once? It's probably,
Sure.
yeah, it's,
You all ready for this? Okay. All right, I'll read mine first. All right. So, dear members of the East Hampton Board, number one, thank you for having me. I'd like to tell you why I'm here tonight. First off, although residing in New York State for many years, I'm originally from New England, where many of the original founding families from here, their origins date back in the 17th century, and they came from Massachusetts and Connecticut. I am someone who grew up in a place where preservation of history, architecture, and land stewardship is tantamount among proud New Englanders. A brand identity that plays an important role in their economies, having many historical events unfold in the early days of the formation of the United States back to the colonial era. Having resided in the foothills of the Berkshire Mountains, at one point living in a house built in the 18th century, which I'm recognizing pegs here, and hand-hewn beams, and corn cobs for insulation in the attic, which a lot of people may not know, surrounded by many period antiques that my mother collected. I believe I know a little bit about historic preservation since, after all, I've lived it. Having visited East Hampton as a guest many years ago, the moment the car turned the corner of Route 27 onto Main Street, where I then saw the old watering hole, the ancient cemetery, the windmill, the colonial era homes that line the road, I immediately felt a sense of familiarity and feeling of calm. I have since found my next chapter forever home here in Wainscott. As a lifelong distance runner, I've passed this property on multiple occasions and in all types of weather conditions. Each time I have waved my hands in the air and thanked my maker for allowing me to observe such a special scenic vista. Like many people here, I also care deeply about preserving the historic roots of Wainscott. The landscape around 66 Main Street represents something that's becoming increasingly rare on the East End. Authentic pastoral setting that still feels connected to the past. And what makes this property so special? It's that it sits in plain sight. The landscape, every day, hundreds of people pass by, drivers, cyclists, runners, walkers, all moving along one of the busiest corridors in the Hamptons. But for a brief moment, okay, I'll continue.
Yeah.
All right. But for a brief moment, as they pass that field, something unusual happens. The horizon opens up, the buildings sit quietly in the distance, and for just a second, it feels like you've stepped back a few centuries. It's the kind of view that has inspired artists for generations, the kind of landscape that sparks creativity, nostalgia, and a sense of place. In a world that moves very fast, it's one of those rare moments when time seems to slow down. That historic viewshed is one of the greatest assets this property has. As the town continues to develop the management plan, preserving that open pastoral character should remain central to the vision. Agriculture has always been part of Wainscott's identity. Maintaining the land as meadow or fallow field would beautifully reflect that heritage, while keeping the landscape visually open and historically consistent. At the same time, we should remain mindful of the environmental realities of the site, particularly the urgent need to protect and improve the water quality of Wainscott Pond. Recently identified as the most polluted ponds on Long Island, it's not one I'm proud to state. Thoughtful stewardship of the surrounding land will be an important part of that effort. Public access is certainly an important goal, but it should emphasize low impact, passive enjoyment, walking, bird watching, and simply experiencing the land. For that reason, a large paved loop path across the property may not be the best fit for such a pastoral setting. A more fitting solution would be something simple, a meandering, mowed grass path, an in and out trail that allows visitors to experience the land while protecting the viewshed and minimizing disruption. Sometimes the best planning decision is simply less asphalt. The lyrics "paved paradise to put up a parking lot" comes to mind. Finally, I strongly encourage the town to establish local historic landmark designation over the entire parcel, not just the buildings, The original Community Preservation Fund resolution envisioned protecting both the structures and the surrounding land, because the landscape itself is part of the history. The fields, the sightlines, the open space, they give meaning to the historic structures. Other CPF properties, including Carl Fisher House, recognize this by designating both buildings and land as historic. Applying that same approach here would only ensure this landscape remains protected in perpetuity. It would be an important step towards establishing a future Waynescott Historic District. Okay, I'm wrapping it up. Every day, thousands of people hurry past the field, trying to get somewhere, trying to beat traffic. But for a few seconds, when they pass 66 Main Street, they get something rare. They get a view of open land, historic buildings, and a horizon that still looks very much like it did 300 years ago. In a place that changes as quickly as the Hamptons, that brief feeling that you somehow step back into 17th century is something special. And once a view like that disappears, well, it's not exactly something we can rebuild later with a permit, a ribbon cutting, and a few truckloads of asphalt. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Bruce. Did you want to read John Stoner's letter?
Yes. Oh, how am I doing so far? You good? Okay, thank you. All right, so. My name is John Stoner. Until 2012, I spent nearly every summer of my life at 70 Beach Lane, with direct view of the pond, fields, and the Osborne homestead parcel just out the back door. My grandfather purchased the property from David Osborne in 1956, and I was born the following year. My family spent almost 60 summers there, and today my wife and I just live 1.6 miles away. The fields, Waynescott Pond, and the open land behind our home were not just scenery, they are part of our everyday life. I respectfully urge the town to preserve this parcel in perpetuity as the open meadow landscape it has become and is known for. In preparing these remarks, I reviewed hundreds of family photos, sets of aerial images from 62 to 23, and much input from Hillary Osborne Malecki. Together, they tell a clear story. Yes, there was farming here historically, but over many decades, this land has been defined by open meadow, the pond, and an uninterrupted view. In early years, the field was used lightly, even for grazing the Osborne cows every summer afternoon crossing from and to Main Street. But in the aerials, nearby fields clearly show row crops, while this parcel largely does not. And where markings appear, they can reflect leftover growth, not active farming. From the ground, it's even clearer. Even photos show a house, 70 Beach Lane, set into a vast open landscape with fields stretching to both ponds. But as importantly, it also matters how this land has been lived in. I think if we gesture to and hopefully folks can see the pictures here, or we can leave it up for people to look at. Early photos show a house. Well, we've got that already. There is a photo of, not me, but John, as a 4-month-old baby with my then 6-year-old brother and Duff, our collie, on those front steps in 1957. Then another decades later, where my brother and I are standing across from the chapel, him as my best man, with that same open field behind us. Then my wife and I, and later our twin sons, on those same steps after their christening. The land did not change, the view did not change, but the lives around it continued. Hillary Osborne Malecki confirmed that in the early 1980s, her family made a conscious decision to stop farming this land and leave it as a meadow. So she also said the land was purchased and applauded for the views. To reintroduce agriculture now would not restore history. It would alter the landscape the town preserved. It would bring deer fencing, irrigation, chemicals, and infrastructure that did not belong beside this pond or within this historic landscape. In many ways, the meadow itself is now the history. So I respectfully ask the town to protect this land as an open meadow, natural edge to Wainscott Pond, a wildlife refuge, and the crown jewel vista of Wainscott. If stewardship by the Peconic Land Trust can help ensure the future, I strongly support it. This is not a place that needs to be reimagined. It's a place that needs to be protected. Thank you.
And you had one more letter you
Got
needed
one
to
more.
read for someone?
Okay. Good to bring a little humor into this, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's not easy standing over here. All right. Anyway, good evening. My name is Terry Elkins.
I'm sorry, say it again?
My name is Terry Elkins.
Okay.
I'm here in support of the Osborne Homestead Management Plan and the proposed use of the land around Wainscott Pond. I'm an artist by profession. I lived and worked near the pond since 1988, and I've painted this view dozens of times. I often say, painting is just an excuse to be here. Because what matters is the experience of the place, spending hours looking out over the sweeping vista. In my opinion, there are no views more beautiful on the East End. In nearly 40 years, I've seen surprisingly little change. The landscape shifts gently, plants come and go, trees grow, dunes move, but the pond and the life around it remain. I passed it at all times of day, gone out of my way just to see how the light changes, how the wind moves through the grass. And I've stood there at dusk in the quiet, watching the sky turn lavender. And for a moment, everything feels right with the world. There is a place like no other. This is a place like no other. And like many others, I would hate to lose it. If there must be a trail, please keep it simple. A mowed path is enough. Please continue to allow duck blinds and hunting. Most importantly, please do everything you can to keep Wainscott Pond and the land around it as it is for everyone. Thank you all involved in preserving this open space. I truly appreciate your efforts. Thanks, folks.
Thank you, Bruce. Kim, you want to come up next? Welcome, Kim.
Good evening. I'm Kim Cordy with the Friends of Georgia Capond. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment on the John Osborne Homestead Management Plan, and would also like to extend our sincere appreciation to the town for its leadership in preserving this property. This truly is a community treasure, and its protection reflects the strong commitment to the long-term environmental health and character of our region. Overall, we find the draft management plan to be thoughtful and well-considered. Our comments today are focused specifically on environmental stewardship, particularly as it relates to water quality. As you know, Wainscott Pond is already an extremely impaired water body, which experiences frequent harmful algae blooms that pose serious threats to aquatic ecosystems and human health. Scientific research consistently demonstrates that upland land use practices have a direct measurable impact on adjacent water bodies, particularly through nutrient loading, stormwater runoff, and groundwater transport. Nitrogen in particular is a primary driver of eutrophication, contributing to harmful algae blooms, degraded water quality, and loss of ecological function. Given this well-established connection, we strongly encourage the town to prioritize management strategies that will improve and protect the water quality of Wainscott Pond. Any activities on the Osborne property should be evaluated through this lens, recognizing that what happens on the land will inevitably influence the pond. In that context, we do not support agricultural practices on the property that would contribute to increased nitrogen loading. Traditional fertilizer-intensive agriculture poses a clear and documented risk to the pond. At the same time, we want to be clear that we are not advocating for permanent exclusion of agriculture, so agricultural practices are continually evolving and the innovation is rapidly changing what is possible. It is important to preserve flexibility for future land uses that may align with both environmental protection and sustainable food production. To that end, we would support low-impact and emerging agricultural models that minimize, eliminate nutrient runoff. Examples would include apiary operations, hydroponic systems, and even novel practices such as snail farming. These approaches demonstrate that agriculture and environmental stewardship need not be mutually exclusive when guided by science and innovation. In closing, we commend the town for its stewardship of this important property and for engaging the community in the process. We respectfully urge the water quality protection grounded in sound science remain a central consideration in all management decisions for the property. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kim. Would anyone else like to address the board on this management plan? Okay, we're going to go to the phones. Matthew, is there anyone on the line for this public hearing?
We have one caller on the line. I'll put them through.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening. Supervisor Brooke Gonzalez, members of the town board. My name is Carolyn Logan Gluck, and I'm speaking on my own behalf as a Wainscott resident on Sayers Pass. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the draft management plan for the Osborne Homestead at 66 Wainscott Main Street. I believe this is, in the main, a well-crafted plan, and I especially wish to thank Ian Piedmont and Scott Wilson for welcoming input from members of the public. However, I also fully support the recommendations made by both the Wainscott CAC and Wainscott Heritage Project. While these have focused on three of the purposes for which the property was acquired, agricultural lands, historic places and properties, and the protection and improvement of water quality, I wish to call attention to the fourth, open space. In the annual CPF management and stewardship plans, it is always stated, open space is a broad category that may include, but not be limited to, lands of exceptional scenic value, wildlife refuges with significant biological diversity, unique or threatened ecological areas. Our goal is to preserve these properties' species diversity, scenic vistas, and groundwater resources. Once again, I ask that this goal guide all decisions made about the way in which this exceptional property, for which you deserve the most sincere thanks, in which this exceptional property should be used and cared for in the future. After all, if public enjoyment is paramount, I would say that this property is most enjoyed by those who drive by regularly, avoiding the Wainscott light and taking in one of the town's most beautifully and easily accessed views. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Matthew, that was the only caller?
That's correct. No more callers are on the line at this point.
I'll go one more time in the room for this, the John Osborne Homestead Management Plan. Okay.
Motion to close.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Michael, if you could read the second public meeting notice, please.
Take notice that the town board of the town of East Hampton will hold a public hearing in the town board meeting room, East Hampton Town Hall, 159 Pentago Road, East Hampton, New York, pursuant to 247 of the general municipal law and section 64E, paragraph 8 of the town law of the state of New York on March 19, 2026 at 6 p.m. or as soon after this matter may be heard, to consider the town's acquisition for the preservation of open space with community preservation funds of a property located at 10 and 14 Lakeside Court, Montauk, reputedly owned by Charles A. Krasny, 2023 Revocable Trust, Stephen M. Loeb and Thatcher Krasny as trustees, and consisting of approximately 1.63 acres of vacant land at a cost to the town of East Hampton not to exceed $3 million, plus reasonable survey, title, prorated tax, and recording charges, said property being described on the Suffolk County tax map as 300-195-5-19.3 and 19.4.
Thank you, Michael. Scott, you want to introduce this public hearing, please?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Okay. So, believe it or not, in 2014, we're still receiving inquiries from our Lake Montauk Outreach Initiative. I find it incredible still. I think we're getting close to 50 of 166 parcels. Pretty amazing. I'm just going to read an excerpt from the resolution adopted when we amended the CPF project plan to include those 166 parcels. These parcels are vacant lands located within the Lake Montauk watershed, all of which being part of a complex drainage system in which much of the surface and groundwater flows into the lake. Many of the parcels have a high water table and poor soil drainage, and any development will require extensive alterations to the natural drainage patterns, which may contribute to chronic flooding. Development of these parcels and subsequent runoff may contribute to the non-point pollution of this watershed and tributary system, which is suspected of contributing substantially to poor water quality and high pollution concentrations within the lake. Thank you, Brian Frank. It's very helpful when he's doing those assessments. The acquisition of vacant properties within the watershed provides an opportunity to reduce and mitigate some of these cumulative impacts by retaining the natural buffering potential of the undeveloped properties. These properties are within the Critical Lands Protection Strategy, a scenic area of statewide significance, is within a significant coastal fish and wildlife habitat, is within a water protection and harbor protection overlay district. These parcels certainly meet the criteria as set forth in Town Law 64E. I would recommend passing a resolution to acquire these properties.
Great, thank you, Scott. Would anyone like to address the board on this acquisition? Matthew, is there anyone on the line?
We have 0 callers on the line.
Motion to close.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Michael, if you could read the third meeting notice, please.
Notice is hereby given that the town board of the town of East Hampton will hold a public hearing at Town Hall 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, New York, on Thursday, March 19, 2026 at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard, to consider comments of all persons on a proposed M&S plan for Community Preservation Fund acquired properties within the town. The full text of the draft 2026 M&S plan dated 3/3/26 is available for inspection at the office of the town clerk, 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, New York, during regular business hours of 9 a.m. through 3:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, exclusive of holidays, as well as on the town webpage, ehampton.gov. Click on the Land Acquisition and Management Department and then on Plans and Resources in the sidebar.
Thank you, Michael. Is that it? Okay. Scott, back to you.
Okay. So this being the 18th edition of the CPF project, CPF Management Stewardship Plan. So as we discussed at our work session on March 3rd, on a year-to-year basis, revising this plan is a good opportunity to revisit our projects, both proposed and in process, to properly account for future and ongoing CPF expenditures. All properties need some form of stewardship, be it posting of signs, cleaning up debris, or reconciling encroachments. However, the majority of the 10% allotment of stewardship funding is attributable to historic restoration projects, which I will outline in a moment. We have acquired interest or rights in real property of 548 parcels, with 7 more in contract representing over 2,445 acres. We accomplished the vast majority of our stewardship work in-house. We create baseline documentation, which documents the parcel as it exists at the time of acquisition. We help create management plans for those properties with some proposed to in use, and we regularly monitor all CPF properties corner to corner every year for encroachments, dumping, and other issues. Both baseline documentation and management plans can be found on the town's website, and we also have the link on page 6 and 7 of this particular document. Now, beyond in-house management, the proposed management and stewardship plan discusses any known projects along with associated expenses. Significant projects for 2026 may be not maybe in this first instance, Carl Fisher House and Annex, 44 Foxborough Road. The town acquired this property for historic open space and recreation on 12/10/2021. The Montauk Historical Society has a license agreement to manage this property. The town has hired DB Bennett to do an engineering and create biddable documents for historic restoration. And the town has hired Robert Hefner, as our historic preservation consultant. We went out for RFP, and just, I believe this past Tuesday, we awarded that RFP.
Tonight.
Yes?
Tonight.
Oh, tonight. Oh. Slightly in excess of $3.6 million. The Dodge property, 803 and 807 Fireplace Road in Springs. The town acquired this property for historic open space and agricultural purpose on 10/25/2023. The property received a local historic designation, Julius D. Parsons Homestead, via Resolution 2023-851. The town hired DB Bennett as our engineer to generate restoration plans, for which plans, bids, and estimates for any associated restoration costs will be created. The town hired Robert Hefner as our historic preservation consultant. Those plans are actually in process. They are incomplete. At the time they're complete and the town decides to move forward, we can revisit this plan for modification. The Edwards House, which is part of the Duck Creek Farm Historic Landmark designation, 367 3 Mile Harbor. The town acquired this property in February 2005 with historic landmark designation in June of 2009. The town is working with LK McLean and Associates for structure assessment of the Edwards House, from which plans, bids, and estimates for any associated restoration costs will be created. Currently, this work is not complete. The town hired Robert Hefner as our historic preservation consultant. We recently met on that property, and we are making great strides towards a complete set of plans. Again, we could revisit that at the time we're prepared to proceed. 66 Wainscott, Maine. The town acquired this property for historic open space, agriculture, and water quality purposes, and designated the structures on that property the John Osborne Homestead Historic Landmark. This property contains the 1904 Louisa Edwards Osborne main house and the 17th century Osborne barn. For 2026, the town has hired Stewart Preservation Services LLC as our historic preservation consultant, and DB Bennett to generate plans for phase 1 exterior restoration of the Louisa Edwards house. Those plans are also ongoing. They were submitted to the various agencies within the town. Once we get their comments and the town board's comments, we can go out for RFP for that project. There are currently significant leaks, so we would like to hurry that process along. The town recently acquired farmland on 20 Springs Fireplace Road. I don't know if you've driven down that road recently. The view is slightly different than it used to be. We did have that assessed. The costs for restoration of that were quite prohibitive, and the decision was made to move forward to remove that structure. Cost of that was $45,197. They're not quite done, but they're almost done. It's still a little bit of grading and seeding that has to go on there. There also may be other projects throughout the year that we are not yet aware of, so once adopted, we may need to revisit this plan for modification via public hearing. The stewardship budget being just over $4.1 million, which is the allowable 10% of available stewardship funding based upon our last auditable year of revenue, 2024. With regard to this plan, the responsibility of our department was to create a document that will guide us in our efforts towards appropriate management stewardship goals and objectives, assist in prioritizing projects, and control related expenditures. This lends transparency to the plan, giving the public the opportunity to participate in the discussion surrounding proposed expenditures. The draft plan has been available to the public. I haven't received any proposed changes or corrections other than the supervisor pointing out that I spelled Robert Hefner wrong. I made that change. The revised date of this plan is 3/3/2026. Are there any questions?
No. Would anyone like to offer any comments on the 2026 CPF Management and Stewardship Plan? Matthew, is there anyone on the line?
We have no callers on the line.
Motion to close.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Scott, thank you for joining us this evening. Michael, if you could please read the fourth meeting notice.
Please take notice that pursuant to Section 2(4) the General Municipal Law, of the State of New York and provisions of the East Hampton Town Code, the Town Board of the Town of East Hampton, New York, will hold a public hearing in the Town Hall Meeting Room, 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, New York, on Thursday, March 19, 2026, at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter, as this matter may be heard, concerning the following grant of scenic and conservation easement to the Town of East Hampton. Grantor 164 Westlake Drive LLC, Ryan Jansen, Managing Member. Type of easement, scenic and conservation. Date of easement, January 13, 2026. Location 164 West Lake Drive, Montauk. Suffolk County Tax Map 300-19-5-8 and 21. Reviewing Agency, Zoning Board of Appeals.
Thank you, Michael. Would anyone like to address the board on this public hearing? Matthew, is there anyone on the line?
We have no callers on the line.
Motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Michael, if you could read the notice for the last public hearing.
Please take notice that pursuant to Section 247 of the General Municipal Law of the State of New York and provisions of the East Hampton Town Code, the Town Board of the Town of East Hampton, New York, will hold a public hearing in the room 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, New York, on Thursday, March 19, 2026 at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard, concerning the following grant of scenic and conservation easement to the Town of East Hampton. Grantor 124 Beach Lane LLC. Type of easement, scenic and conservation. Date of easement, February 10, 2026. Location 124 Beach Lane, Wainscott. Suffolk County Tax Map 300-202-2-9.2. Reviewing Agency, Zoning Board of Appeals.
Thank you, Michael. Would anyone like to address the board on this public hearing? Matthew, is there anyone on the line?
We have no callers on the line.
Motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now we're up to public portion. Michael, is there anyone signed up for public portion? Okay, so I'm going to have a show of hands. Minerva, and then Allison, and then. Yep. Welcome, Minerva.
Hi there, Kathy. Nice to see you all. I see everyone here. So my name is Minerva Perez. I'm the executive director of OLEF Eastern Long Island, and I tried to prepare this to make sure I didn't go on. So on August 3rd, 2025, ICE ran a random and warrantless raid at 9 a.m. at a laundromat in Greenport. Not looking for dangerous criminals, just people doing laundry with their children. A father here for 20 years with his two twin 10-year-old boys was almost taken, and we are still working with him to be sure that he has a real lawyer to help him with his case. Many individuals have been scammed, leaving them with no money and no trust to keep trying. He didn't even have a parking ticket in his background. From that moment, we watched as one random raid after another shook Riverhead, Hampton Bays, West Hampton, Greenport, Riverhead, Greenport, Riverhead, again, etc. We studied options to create concrete, accountable actions that do not pretend to have power over ICE. Fred Thiel on OLA's board and a 30-year assemblyman, recently retired, crafted a first draft and then a second draft of a local law focused entirely on public safety and accountability, not an anti-ICE doctrine. We met with town and village leadership. Kathy was there. Thank you for being there. I appreciate it. We drafted a third version incorporating suggestions from this leadership, including some folks who were representing law enforcement. All police chiefs have also received this proposed law. We have been open and clear about the need for this action. As of this moment, East Hampton Village is ready to move forward with a law that is actually going a little bit further and incorporating some aspects that they feel important. This law should also be adaptable to each town and each village, but it should be a law. We're not interested in waiting until these damaging actions come to East Hampton to have a clear local law requiring local law enforcement to respond and report back to the supervisor as to the actions of masked persons holding weapons and commanding community members to submit to questions and submit to seizure. Local law enforcement cannot stop these actions. We know that. This law will allow for clarity of what these actions are. It will also require the town to have plans established in the event that ICE actions are happening near sensitive areas such as schools, hospitals, healthcare facilities, etc. These plans should be developed by the town to best serve the sensitive areas. Example, if ice is in front of a school when it's letting out, as recently with Riverhead when it was starting. Local law enforcement or other emergency service providers may be called to support children getting into school buses and perhaps even escort the bus home. Again, these plans should be constructed by the town to serve the town. This law is fully actionable as it is. No permission is needed from the state or the county. This is not a sanctuary trigger. It is not an opposition to ICE. It establishes a clear line that must be codified into law, that all people of the town of East Hampton should have the reasonable expectation to go about most important areas of their life, children getting to school, doctor's visits, emergency room visits, et cetera, with a degree of confidence and safety supported by our town and our local law enforcement, as is accepted by law. I am going to say one more thing very quickly, which is that the next person that's going to speak, the last time that she was here, she was about 9 years old, and I have a beautiful picture that I'll send to the board of Angie on her tiptoes with her headband and 2 little cat ears, speaking out, and this is very important, when this town and other municipalities accepted administrative warrants, which is against our Constitution. This little girl, Angie, who's going to speak right now, she's a senior in East Hampton High School, spoke out about the fear that her own mother and she and her friends were experiencing because our towns were not stopping that. They were allowing administrative warrants to continue, and that was against our Constitution. We are seeing what that is doing right now to Suffolk County in the form of a $61 million settlement. And Angie is here now, this many years later, to speak, to support her community, to do the right thing. And we ask you to do the right thing.
Thank you, Minerva. Welcome, Angie.
Hi, it's a little low. Hi, I am a senior at East Hampton High
Just
School.
say your full name so that the clerk can get it for the record.
My full name is Angie Castillo Shagui.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everything that she said is pretty much true. I have read through the document that they are talking about, and I thought that it was a really great initiative for the community because I don't really think there is much transparency, especially like all across Suffolk County. I think that I've read so many stories and I've heard so many stories. I've talked to so many people that have talked about how it's really scary to see everything that's going on and just feel so incredibly helpless, feel like you can't really do anything about it, and that you kind of wonder, like, it's always in the back of your head, like, what's going to happen? Like, is today going to be the day that, like, my parents, like, something's going to happen to them, like, completely unwarranted? And of course, you know, ICE does have a job. I do acknowledge that. I know that there are very harmful people in our country that truly, I guess, don't deserve to be here. But I also know that there are a lot of families here that truly just wanted like the best for their family and like their children and future generations. And so it's really heartbreaking to see so many unwarranted arrests and illegal activity going on by ICE that just isn't supported by our Constitution. Especially when it's just families or teenagers or anybody who's just trying to live their day to day. I've heard a lot of stories that don't even involve adults, just teenagers trying to get from here to there. Everything in Minneapolis, just here, and I would never want to see that occur in our own hometown, which I love so much. I have received so much help from our community, just as I was growing up, and I've met so many amazing community members who share same views as me, share different views than me, that I've learned so much from. All the programs, all the volunteering I've done. I mean, I love this place, and I would love to see new action come forward. I don't want it to become a situation where it's like we're at the last moment and then what do we do? Like, we're just scrambling. I want to see my town get better, and I want to come back here when I'm older and, you know, settle down here as well. So I just want the best for it. So that's it.
Thank you, Angie.
All right.
Great.
Allison, you wanted to speak next? Welcome, Allison.
Hello, welcome. Good evening, all council members. It's so good to see you guys. For the record, my name is Allison Felenius. a lifelong resident of East Hampton, and also a founding member of our local chapter of Beacon for Democracy, which is one of the hats I'm wearing tonight, and we've got a couple of our members here in the audience as well. And thank you for the honor of being able to join our local Latino Advisory Committee here in East Hampton. And so I'm here this evening in support of the same thing as Minerva and Angie in establishing an East Hampton specific public safety and accountability law. Some folks have already heard me say this yesterday, but for the record, I'm going to reiterate it. I said it on my socials. I've been contemplating this idea, and Angie touched on it, about what the concept of the American dream means to me. And I've determined that for me, it means living with ease, without constraint or fear. And right now in our community, so many of our neighbors are trying to live out their own versions of the American dream, but instead of living their dreams, they're living a nightmare and in constant fear because of the actions of our federal government, which is why I believe it's vital that we as a community establish an actual plan, for when our town becomes the target of these federal actions. Establishing an East Hampton specific public safety and accountability law would and could clearly identify roles and responsibilities and outline direct actions to be taken when a disruption occurs. Now, I know townwide emergency management plans exist, but I'd like to see a specific and dedicated plan for what steps are taken when a member of our community is taken off of the streets. We have an opportunity right now to be courageous leaders of the East End and to step up and take action even if other neighboring towns are not. I appreciate that the Village of East Hampton seems to have added the matter as a topic of discussion, as Minerva mentioned, to their agenda at one of their upcoming work sessions, and I urge you to do the same. Thus far, much of the conversation about this proposed law has been around what this and other town boards cannot do. Instead, I'd like us to focus on what we can do. We can establish an emergency preparedness response plan so that everyone in our community knows and understands their role and what they can expect from our local law enforcement and this board. The community needs to know that this board and the local PD will have their backs, and I am by no means suggesting that you don't already. What I am saying is that this action can reaffirm this to the community. The town has made great efforts in putting out statements, working with Ruta 27, having PD-specific outreach to the Latino community, and the arrangement of the newly reestablished Latino Advisory Committee. But I think we need more to do more than that in this moment. And if former New York State Assemblyman Fred Thiel, with his extensive career legislating, believes it is possible to get some version of this passed, I'm inclined to believe him. Several iterations of the proposed language have already been circulated, mostly across social media, and the matter has been discussed in meetings, but thus far, it's been without the input of the community at large. And so tonight, I'm urging you and asking you, with the utmost respect for each and every one of you, to be courageous, to forget about drafting a perfect version of the language of the law and begin an open dialogue with the community. So the next step in the process would be putting the matter on one of your agendas, and I'm asking you to do that for April 7th, your April 7th work session. So let the conversation be a guide, and we as a community can work together to create something that we can be proud of. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Catherine? Welcome, Catherine.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Mitchell. I live in East Hampton. I've lived here for a long time. I'm a social worker. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a Spanish speaker, and I've worked with the immigrant community out here in various capacities since 1999. I've been doing this a long time, and I've stood in front of this esteemed group, not you guys specifically, but in other iterations many times over the years. And we've come a long way, in a lot of ways. I mean, we are a very amicable community in so many ways. And I think, the request tonight to put the idea of this law on the work session agenda in April is just a continuation of who we are as a community. Oh, getting emotional. I didn't know that was going to happen. I guess the point I want to touch on, I don't want to, repeat what has already been said, But in my, I own a counseling practice in Sag Harbor, and we serve primarily, we serve everybody, but we have a very large Spanish-speaking clientele, mostly because all of us who work there are Spanish speakers. And one of the things that we've seen in the last year is just, not just the anxiety and the fear, but also the brokenness that has happened in families when, all of a sudden somebody doesn't come home from work or school and you don't know why, and you don't know where they are, and you don't know what's happened to them, and nobody can find them. We've heard that story again and again and again over the last couple of years, and I think that's one of the points that this proposed law would be addressed, that we have a mindful plan, not to try to subvert, federal action, which we have no control over, but to be who we are as a town, to treat everybody with respect, and to give everybody an opportunity to be, treated in a respectful way, no matter what happens to them. And I think, I don't want to take up too much time because I'm sure there's other people who want to talk, but I'm just going to read this one piece out of the talking points on this that really strikes me. When hundreds of children don't attend school, when roads become less safe to walk near or drive, when a trip to get morning coffee could turn into an act of violence, when allowing your teenager to walk to an after-school activity threatens harassment or warrantless arrest, when a community once peaceful, safe, and thriving lives on edge, our shared public safety is broken. And I think, to me, the operative word here is shared. This is really about all of us. It's not about one segment of our community. It's about everybody, and it's about treating everybody in a safe and respectful way. And I know, that you guys have stepped up at other times on these things, and I am confident that you will this time, to put this out so that we can have some public conversation on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Susan, did you want to speak? Please.
Hello, my name is Susan Retzke, and I'm also honored to be a member of the Latino Advisory Board Committee to the board. And I am a full-time resident for many years around McGowan. I think this is an excellent resolution at a time of so much ugly language and blame and everything else, because it right away says this is what we can't do, and we can't undo what the federal government is trying to do. We just want it to be done in a way that is respectful. So it's such a positive resolution, and I urge you to pass it, put it on the agenda, and at least have an open dialogue about it, because it really puts in place a way to respect people and to let them live not in fear, that the whole community can get together and be a part of. And I think that the police department being a part of the committee is a very positive step in that direction. So I know some of you I've just met, but I have faith that this will get done. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Yes, please. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi. Hello, Madam Supervisor and members of the town board. Thanks for your time. My name is Christopher Kajemian. I'm a full-time resident here in East Hampton, and I also am here to urge you to accept this law. This proposed law would allow the town to do three things. It protects residents from impersonators, agitators, and those seeking to inflame political tensions due to national events. It ensures the transparency in a way that local law enforcement can be proactive rather than reactive during any activities that may disrupt public life. And finally, the resolution maintains public trust. Frankly, there's a lot of fear, confusion, and hateful rhetoric around from so many. This is palpable around us on our devices, unfortunately, and it's also a local reality for many residents in East Hampton. I personally know American citizens on Long Island who had their civil rights violated, and I know local law enforcement officers who struggle in the ambiguity of our current reality to know how to best serve those whom they're supposed to. Immigration enforcement is a federal responsibility, but addressing the confusion, civil rights, fear, and safety on our streets is a local imperative. Again, I urge you all to accept the resolution and to allow trust, transparency, and calm to remain core features of our local government. Please, let's do better and clearly face our fears as a community rather than turn ourselves into an indifferent Pandora's box. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Would anyone else like to address the board? Gloria? Welcome back, Gloria.
Thank you. Back to winter. I've been in New Orleans for the past couple of months. That's why you haven't seen me here. Gloria Frazee, resident of the town of East Hampton. And it's Thursday night, and usually when I'm here, not in New Orleans, though there I'm out with another group, I stand by Hook Mill holding this sign. It says, does someone who speaks Spanish want to pronounce this properly? So this means, in English, no human is illegal. When I hold this sign, no human is illegal, I don't think first about slogans or politics. I think about our neighbors. I think about what kind of community we're trying to be for one another. This proposed law is really about something very simple: honesty and trust. If federal immigration enforcement is happening in our town, families deserve to know. People deserve to understand what is happening around them so they can make safe, informed decisions for themselves and their children, including Angie, who spoke earlier. It also creates a community task force made up of local residents, people who understand the realities of daily life, to help make sure that essential connections to school, healthcare, and basic services that are important to our neighbors, to our community, remain intact. Transparency isn't an abstract policy goal. It is how communities stay healthy. It is how neighbors look out for neighbors. That commitment to transparency naturally leads to the next question: what can you, as our town board, actually do about it? The answer is quite a lot. Local governments are not powerless bystanders. Under the 10th Amendment and the long-recognized local authority over public safety and municipal property, you have the ability, and I'd also say the responsibility, to set clear standards for how enforcement actions happen in our community. This law does not create conflict. It creates clarity. It simply says, not on town property without a warrant, not without accountability, not without the community being informed. When residents stand up and ask their local officials to take these steps, they are not being disruptive. They are participating in democracy at the most practical level, the local level, where decisions directly shape people's daily lives. And when a town board steps up, it sends a powerful message that this is a community where transparency matters, where public trust matters, and where neighbors are not left in the dark. This sign means something. This law is how it means something here. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Would anyone else like to address the board? Okay, so we're going to move on to our resolutions. Oh, wait, first let me ask, Matthew, is there anyone on the line?
Yeah, we have several callers on the line.
Oh, okay,
I'll put the first
great.
one through. All right, caller with number ending in 5318. I'm going to unmute you.
Hi, my name is Karen Sanchez, and I work for OLA of Eastern Long Island. I've been a resident of this community since I was 5 years old, but I'm also an immigrant who chooses to call the East End my home. And right now, many immigrant families in our community are living with uncertainty and fear, not because they've done something wrong, but because of the lack of transparency around enforcement action. And while people are afraid, and when people are afraid, they stop reporting crimes and they avoid schools, hospitals, and other public services. That doesn't make us safer. It makes us all more vulnerable. The Public Safety and Accountability Law is about restoring that balance and trust, and our town has both the right and duty to protect the safety, peace, and trust of everyone who lives here. This law ensures that when federal enforcement actions happen, there's transparency and accountability. As an immigrant, we want to feel safe calling the police, not afraid of them. We want to be a part of this community, not invisible within it. This law strengthens the relationship between residents and the local law enforcement. It protects constitutional rights and it reinforces what makes this town strong. Passing this law sends a message that public safety includes everyone, that transparency matters, and that this town stands for both order and justice. I urge you to help pass this law, not just for immigrants, but for the safety and well-being of the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Matthew, please put on the next caller.
Okay, caller with a number ending in 8662. I'm unmuting you now.
Hi, Supervisor Burke-Gonzalez and Town Board. This is Anna Skrenta from Amagansett. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I just want to say a few things quickly, excuse me. I was listening to the speakers who were commenting about the John Osborne draft management plan regarding, preservation of land and historic structures in Waynescott. And I couldn't help but be struck by the level of care and thought and work that goes into protecting and preserving these places. It's honorable, and it's one of the characteristics that makes the East End that makes East Hampton so extraordinarily beautiful and unique. But there is another element that I want to urge the board to focus their attention and efforts on protecting. That is our beautiful, vital, and hardworking Latino and immigrant community, so many of whom are living in fear. We owe it to the residents of our town, whatever their background and status, to dedicate the same amount of time and resources into creating a plan to do everything in our power to foster public safety. It's been a little over a year since Donald Trump took office for the second time and started his brutal and cruel mass deportation program. In all that time, we as a town have not had a public discussion about what our protocol will be when the inevitable ICE raids come to our streets. But now Ola and Fred Thiel have provided us with a wonderful framework to finally have this long overdue conversation and for us to take action to protect and preserve our residents, especially our most vulnerable ones. It's time for action that better supports and protects all members of this East End community. I am urging the town board to work with the town police and town lawyers to draft a version of this law for the town of East Hampton and to have a public discussion about it at the April 7th work session. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Anna. Matthew, could you please put through the next caller?
Okay. Caller with number ending in 6597. I'm unmuting you now.
Good evening, everyone. To the supervisor and members of the town board, I hope you can all hear me. My name is Jonathan Lopez, and I proudly serve on the Town of East Hampton's Latino Advisory Committee. I happen to be one of the younger members, and I'm also the co-founder of Latino Young Professionals of the East End, which is an affinity group backed by Ola of Eastern Long Island, where we work to offer increased accessibility to academic and professional development for all Latino residents, regardless of their immigration status. So beyond my titles, I'm someone who grew up here. And my deepest dedication is to building a community made up of good and kind neighbors, which I feel like is the general message behind everyone speaking tonight. Like many young Latinos from our area, I'm currently away at college, but I'm deeply, deeply grateful to join you by phone tonight to voice my strong support for the East End Public Safety and Accountability Law. I'm calling tonight on behalf of many community members who cannot speak out because of that paralyzing fear tied to their undocumented status. I truly believe we need to stand together as one community. We all know this. East Hampton is a home to a vibrant, mixed status population. Families who simply want to live, work, and be good neighbors in peace. If the town board embraces this law, you set a powerful precedent. You show that this town board is willing to stand up for those forced to hide in the shadows. And it demonstrates that you are dedicated to breaking the cycle of fear and building a truly safe community for everyone. This proposed law is a compassionate, practical step forward. The aim isn't to end all ICE actions or encroach upon federal powers, but to actually extend the power of local town and village authority. This local law focuses on what towns and villages can do to create effective emergency responses that better support schools, hospitals, daycare centers, and elder centers during random ICE raids. Truly speaking, when a community once peaceful, safe, and thriving lives on the edge, our shared public safety is broken. This applies to everyone. I truly believe our residents must feel obligated and empowered to trust our local law enforcement officials. So if a neighbor sees a raid unfolding, they should feel confident in calling 911. Our local police officers can then arrive to preserve public safety, document the arrest with their body cameras, and respectfully ask federal agents to clearly identify themselves. The best protection against disruption of public safety is a clearly stated law that includes roles, responsibilities, and consequences. So, I respectfully urge the town board to collaborate with local law enforcement to draft this law and hold a public discussion at your April 7th work session. The vision we can all create for a better safety response and a better future is what our community needs. I thank you all for your time, your leadership, and your compassion. And I truly hope we can make this decision together. Thank you.
Thank you, John. If you could please put the next caller through, Matthew.
We have no new callers on the line.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move on then to our resolutions. Tom, you're
Thank you,
first
Madam
up.
Supervisor. I'll start with Resolution 2026-41. This is approval of claims on warrant number 3B in the amount of $2,878,623.84 and $122,680.89 respectively.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
482 is to authorize attendance at a food manager's course for the Human Services Department at a cost to the town not to exceed $225.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion to remove Resolution 483.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. It's my privilege to offer Resolution 2026-44. This is for water quality grant extensions for 3 projects, one being Harbor Marina LLC, the other one would be Cornell Cooperative Extension, and the last one, project sponsor, is the Village of Sag Harbor. Whereas the town desires to authorize 1-year extensions for the contracts of these 3, successful completion of these projects are still important to water quality improvement projects.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 485 is to reappoint Christine Ganich to the Community Preservation Fund Advisory Board. And her reappointment will go through March 23rd, 2033.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 486 is accept resignation of part-time groundskeeper Charles Marisi, retroactive to January 25th, 2026.
Second. All in
Move for
favor?
comment. I would just like to thank Charlie for everything he's done for the town. Beyond just his role as a groundskeeper, he was an ambulance driver for many, many years at PD, a wonderful person who has done a lot for this community, and I wish him all well.
All in favor?
Aye. 487 is to pay out upon resignation for Ryan Warren, where he resigned from full-time position automotive mechanic 1, the town highway department, effective January 22nd, 2026. All the time records indicate that there's a balance of 4.73 hours in vacation time and 7.5 hours in overuse of personal time. Therefore, we request a payment of amount of $156.79.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 480 is to authorize the CPF water quality contribution to the Peconic Estuary program as they're submitting funding request for proposal for the water quality funds. This amount for 2026 is $257,000.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 489 is approved supplemental grant funding for Cornell Cooperative Extension for 60 Harbor View permanent reactive barrier. They're looking for additional $5,615 for the cost of additional monitoring of this event and well.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 490 is amending resolution 2026-316. This is for a snowplow contractor for the 2026 season for Keith Grimes Incorporated. And below you'll see the pay rates per equipment and operator.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 491 is appoint seasonal snow remover driver in the highway department, Todd Fagerlin, retroactive to February 22nd, 2026.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
492 is the notice of bidders for EH 26-015. This is for shade shelters for the Montauk Skate Park and the Fred W. Thiel Recreational Facility. The bid is available March 19th, 2026. The bid is due back April 9th, 2026. Please contact the town's purchasing department for further information.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 493 is to set notice of bidders for bid EH 26-016. This is for the Abraham's Path Comfort Station and site improvements, including pickleball. This bid is available March 19th, 2026, and the bid is due back April 16th, 2026. Please contact the town's purchasing department for further information. There also will be a pre-bid meeting held at 11 a.m. on Wednesday, April 1st, 2026, at the site of 385 Abraham's Path, New York.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 494 is a notice of bidders for EH 26-014. This is for portable toilets and rental and servicing for the calendar year 26. The bid is available March 19th, 2026. The bid is due back April 9th, 2026.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 495 is a set bid EH 25-052 for the Carl Fish Restoration. This is contract A for site work to Ronald Webb Builder, LLC. Contract B for plumbing to Island Piping Solutions. Contract C is electric to Ronald Webb Builder, and contract D is HVAC also to Ronald Webb Builder, LLC.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 496 is set bid EH 26-008. This is for annual sports court construction resurfacing requirements contract to the Land Tech Group, LLC. They hereby accept the bid of $581,060.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 497 is a notice of public hearing to amend Chapter 240 Vehicles and Traffic of the East Hampton Town Code, Section 62, Section 12, no stopping for portions of Esmer Street listed below. And the public hearing will be held on April 2nd, 2026 at 6 p.m.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 2026-498 is a notice of public hearing to amend Chapter 240 Vehicles and Traffic of the East Hampton Town Code, Section 62, Schedule 12, no stopping. And these are for two locations noted below on Manor Road and Fort Pond Road. The public hearing also will be held on April 2nd, 2026 at 6 p.m.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 499 is a secret determination for land acquisition for the Montauk Police Substation, Public Safety Building. Town Board hereby issues a negative declaration pursuant to secret.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 2026-500 is amend Resolution 2025-1364 for bid number EH 25-037 for Town Hall window and facade restoration for Ronald Webb Builder, LLC. Additional work has been requested for the Parsons Barn South facade in the amount of $64,938, and these are for additional window work.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 501 is to approve change order number 6 for the Montauk Playhouse Community Center to Boilermatic Welding Incorporated for bid number EH 23-036. This is for chilled water pump, larger pump, including piping modifications, electric to Boilermatic in the amount of $43,982.06.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 2026-502 is appropriation of capital reserve funds for building capital improvements. And we are going to be moving townwide capital fund reserve A in the amount of $175,711 increase the revenue line listed below in the same amount and increase the expenditure line in the same amount also.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 503 is to pay NYMER deductible for the village of, to the village of East Hampton for a street pole that was damaged by East Hampton Town Highway truck in the amount of $1,375.85.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 504 is a bond resolution for $1.5 million to finance the acquisition of land located at 68 South Elmwood Avenue, Montauk, New York.
Second. Can I get a roll call,
vote.
please?
Councilmember Flight.
Aye.
Deputy Supervisor Lease.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers.
Aye.
Councilmember Calder Piedmont.
Aye.
Supervisor Kathy Burke-Gonzalez.
Aye.
I'd like to motion to untable resolution 2026-468.
Second.
All in favor?
I'd like a motion to present I'm going to make a motion to present Resolution 2026-468. This authorizes the acquisition of 68 South Elmwood Avenue, Montauk. The purported owner is Irene D'Agostino. Location is 68 South Elmwood Avenue, Montauk. Suffolk County Tax Map 300-49-6. Purported purchase price is $1.45 million. Suffolk County Tax Map, as I mentioned earlier.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have Resolution 2026-505. This is a notice of public hearing to accept a grant of scenic and conservation easement at 59 Sandcastle Lane in Amagansett. This public hearing will be held on Thursday, April 2nd at 6 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
506 is a notice of public hearing for a grant of a scenic and conservation easement at 840 Springs Fireplace Road. This public hearing will also take place on Thursday, April 2nd at 6 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next resolution is 507. This is also a notice of public hearing for a grant of scenic and conservation easement at 52 Oyster Shores. This public hearing will also be held on April 2nd at 6 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 508 is to adopt local law to amend Chapter 151 of the East Hampton Town Code for special events permits, whereas the Special Events Committee recommended updates to Chapter 151, whereas the town board held a public hearing on March 6th to consider amending certain provisions, whereas the adoption of the proposed amendment to Chapter 151 is a type 2 action under SECRA. Resolved that it be enacted by the town board with all the amendments as follows.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 509 is to waive application fees for Peconic Land Trust for Quail Hill Farm. Peconic Land Trust has operated Quail Hill Farm for 35 years as a community-supported agriculture farm in Amagansett. Site plan application for approval has been submitted to improve agricultural parking and wash pack around the timber frame barn, relocate the existing greenhouse, add a new greenhouse, replace the deer fence at the Home Farm Valley area so that they can grow perennial berries again. Peconic Land Trust is requesting a waiver of application fees to support their CSA farm. Resolved that the town board authorizes the waiving of the application fees for the Peconic Land Trust.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 510 is reimbursement of a cleanup deposit for Belansky Foundation 5K. This is a special event that had been canceled. Therefore, resolved that the town clerk issues a refund check to the Beljansky Foundation in the amount of $3,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 511 authorizes a license agreement with New York Singular PSC LLC for use of the cellular communication tower at Stephen Hance Path, whereas by Resolution 2020-1202, Town of East Hampton authorized a limited partnership with Verizon, whereas Verizon constructed the temporary tower and subsequently new Singular Wireless entered into agreements with the town of Verizon to co-locate at the temporary tower, whereas AT&T has applied to and received approval from Town Planning Board for the installation of equipment upon the subject tower, whereas the proposed action is considered a type 2 action pursuant to SEQA, whereas AT&T is seeking a license agreement with the town to co-locate on the subject tower. Resolved that the supervisor is authorized and directed to execute the license agreement with AT&T. Resolved that the town shall be compensated at the rate of $4,200 per month for the first year of the license, payable monthly, with a 2% annual escalation rate for each calendar year after. And this is for the tower located at 106 Stephen Hance Path.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 512 is a notice of public hearing to accept a scenic easement and urban renewal parcel map URP 69B in urban renewal map MN-2. This public hearing will be held on April 16th at 6 p.m. and the location is 178 South Essex Street in Montauk.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 513 is a notice of public hearing for the grant of a scenic and conservation easement at 16 South Genesee Court in Montauk. This public hearing will also be held on Thursday, April 16th at 6 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 2026 is a payout upon resignation for Ryan Benitez. This is as Ryan has resigned from his full-time position, the finance office is authorized to cut a check for a gross total of $7,110.16.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 515, this is a notice of public hearing to amend Chapter 240, Vehicles and Traffic, Section 35, Permits of the East Hampton Town Code. Public hearing will be held on April 2nd at 6 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 516, this is a notice of a public hearing to amend Chapter 138, Filming. The public hearing is scheduled to be held on April 2nd at 6 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 517, this is a budget modification for the East Hampton Justice Court JCAP application. This is to increase revenue account code for state aid JCAP Justice Court in the amount of $4,328.91, and increase expenditure account codes for furniture and fixtures in the amount of $3,951.63, and office expenses in the amount of $377.28.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 518, this is Community Development Block Grant Budget Modification. Notice of a public hearing, which will be held on May 7th at 6 p.m. for the following modifications. Moving $75,000 from EH Septic Replacement to Whalebone Village ADA Rehab. Moving $98.71 from St. Michael's Senior Housing to Whalebone Village ADA Rehab. And moving $124.95 from Windmill Village 1 Apartments to Windmill Village 1 Kitchen Reno. And lastly, moving $378.17 from Windmill Village 1 and 2 Equipment to Windmill Village 1 Kitchen Reno for a total budget modification of $75,601.83.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 519, this is a budget modification for insurance. The Housing Department to decrease lease of equipment in the amount of $1,500 and increase general insurance in the same amount.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have Resolution 2026-520, and that's to authorize the payment for a 2025 Verizon invoice at the airport in the amount of $47.62. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
521 is to approve a leave of absence for Police Officer Samantha Dushman, and this is a one-year unpaid leave of absence beginning April 2026 through April 26, 2027. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
522 is a notice of bidders, EH 26-018. It's the printing of miscellaneous forms for March 2026. The bid is available March 19th and due back April 9th. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
523 is to authorize a payment to the New York Tactical Officers Association in the amount of $999.98. Second. All in favor? Aye. 524 is a budget modification for the Finance Department for additional funds for the annual fixed asset report. We're decreasing printing in the amount of $50 and increasing outside professional in the same amount. Second. All in favor? Aye. 525 is to accept bid EH 26-012. This is Glock handguns and associated items for East Hampton Town Police Department. Goes to Amchar Wholesale, Inc., and the financial impact is $101,152.50. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
526 is to authorize a human services grant to the Choral Society of the Hamptons and a budget modification. I brought this up in my liaison report on Tuesday, and this is a grant, a one-time grant in the amount of $5,500 to support their anniversary concert series. Second. All in favor? Aye. Resolution 527 is to increase airport landing fees and fuel flowage fees. This was discussed at the February 3rd Town Board work session. I brought it up again in my liaison report on Tuesday. Increasing landing fees and fuel flowage fees will help increase revenues to cover new debt service. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
528 is to authorize payment for emergency responder product, and this is for uniform items for various police personnel in the amount of $4,311.24.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
529 is the completion of probationary period for police officer Ian Gherkin. Ian Gherkin is permanently appointed to the position of police officer effective retroactive to February 19th, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations to Officer Gherkin. Resolution 530 is to amend Resolution 2026-476 for the contract total for EH 25-036. This was for the East Hampton Town Police Department dispatch room renovations. The new contract amount is $861,808.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
531 is to accept a donation of office furniture from Epic Insurance Brokers and Consultants, and we hereby accept their generous donation with the estimated value of $7,500 to be used by various town departments.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
532 is the completion of probationary period for police officers Paul Gonzalez and Ian Cook. Paul Gonzalez and Ian Cook are permanently appointed to the positions of police officer effective retroactive to February 19th, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And again, congratulations to these two officers. 533 is to amend the 2026 capital plan. The town police department has identified a project. It's a new camera recording system to be used at police headquarters at an estimated cost of $65,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 534, this is to accept proposal from Civic Plus for additions to the town website. The amount is $7,851.51 for the first year, with annual recurring services at a cost of $8,747 thereafter, as well as the associated budget modifications, which is a decrease in full-time salaries in the amount of $7,852 and an increase in computer software in the same amount.
Second.
Discussion? I just want to thank the current clerk, Michael Hanson, for bringing this to the town's attention. I support this tremendously. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 535 is to revise Resolution 2025-1505, retain P. Edward Reale as the special counsel to the Town Housing Department for 2025. There needed to make a change in the budget account number. The financial impact remains not to exceed $10,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
536 is to revise Resolution 2026-248, retain P. Edward Reale as special counsel to the Town Housing Department for 2026. Again, the same thing, it was we need to change the budget account number, and the financial impact remains at $10,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
537 is to authorize a letter agreement with the Long Island Electric Utility Servco LLC, does business as LIPA, to offer non-exclusive license for a portion of the land at East Hampton Town Airport, and this is for the purpose of parking and storing equipment during storms and storm restoration activities, subject to appropriate insurance and such other requirements set forth in the agreement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
538, I have to amend this. It should say amend the 2026 CSEA Schedule A, add senior paralegal. And this is, we're adding the senior paralegal position as a grade 29 with a schedule of 40 hours per week, effective immediately.
Second is amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have Resolution 539, which is a budget modification in the building department. This is decreasing full-time salaries in the amount of $25,000 and increasing outside professional in the same amount.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 540 is to hire Greenlight Professional Consulting Services for 2026, whereas the town board received a proposal from Greenlight Technologies to provide professional consulting services for plan review and zoning compliance services for various residential and commercial type construction projects. Be it resolved that the town board hereby retains Greenlight Technologies in accordance with their proposal dated March 19th. Resolved that the town supervisor is authorized and directed to enter into an agreement.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Resolution 541 is to authorize requests for fiscal year 27 congressionally directed spending and community project funding. This allows the Grants Division, in coordination with the town board and applicable departments, to submit applications to the congressionally directed spending and community project funding fiscal year 2027 opportunities. Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, so that's everything we have for tonight, unless we've got anything to bring up.
No, motion to close.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and thank you, LTV.
All right, you got it. Good night, everyone.
Good night, Matt.